it's Mo. Today I want to do the evolution of a reader tag. This tag was created by Jack at Spread Book Joy, and it's a really interesting and thought-provoking tag all about your evolution as a reader. Question number 1, has your taste in books evolved? I think looking at my taste in books when I was younger to now, my taste in books have definitely evolved and changed, and I would say grown as well. I think I'm a more diverse and thoughtful reader than I was back then. So a good example of this is if you look at my 2 videos on my favorite novellas. One video is my favorite novellas pre-Booktube, and it's basically all old white men. And then my favorite novellas post starting Booktube is much more diverse. It has Black authors, it has authors of color, it has Asian authors, it has different genres. All of the books in the first video basically were either vintage sci-fi or modern classics, and in the second video it's just a whole range of different things. We have sci-fi, we have horror, we have suspense and romance. So I think that in one way is a huge difference in my reading from being younger to being older. I definitely read much more diversely. I read a lot more LGBTQIA books. I read a lot more novellas in general. I've really discovered that I love short books, and I don't particularly get along with long books. I think when I was younger I tried to force those long books, and those are a lot of the books that I don't really remember. I definitely read less YA now that I'm older. I don't particularly like YA or identify with it now. I don't read a lot of middle grade now. Every once in a while I read some of those areas of books, but more often than not, no. Something that hasn't changed as I've gotten older is that I still love vintage sci-fi. I still love sci-fi on all levels. I still love mysteries. I was always a big mystery fan when I was young, growing up watching and then reading Sherlock Holmes and Poirot and other mostly BBC adaptations of books that I then later read. Although technically I haven't actually read any Poirot yet. I have read Miss Marple though, and that counts too. More diverse genres and themes, more adult titles in general. I think in one way that my reading has changed, maybe not for the better, is that when I was young I was a huge comic book person. I just devoured comic books and graphic novels. You know, I had the hold list at my comic book store that I would get every week of just titles and titles and titles. And I think as I've gotten older I've read less comics and graphic novels. I definitely find that individual issues of comics are hard to keep up with, and because I don't buy as many things just in general, I don't want to be purchasing all those comic books. But I do miss reading comics and graphic novels as much as I used to, so that's something that maybe I would like to get back to. Question number 2. Has the format of your reading changed much? And if we're talking about graphic novels versus just textbooks, then a little bit. I definitely always did read textbooks, but now books of text, not textbooks, although I've read textbooks. But anyway, books of text versus graphic novels. I probably would say that I read more graphic novels and comics, just because they're easier to get through and they're quick and they're simple to read a lot of the times, so you can read them much faster and many more of them. But now I definitely read almost the majority of textbooks. I still don't use an e-reader or really read anything on the computer or on my phone or any kind of digital reading. Very, very rarely do I do that, and only for like short stories and things like that. I've always listened to audiobooks, but I would say that I listen to many more audiobooks now than I did in the past. I would go through phases, but I'm not in a big music phase right now. I'm definitely in a big audiobook phase. So has it changed? Yes, but very much no. Question number 3. Do you read more or less than previously? When do you read? How often do you read? Has how often do you read changed? I have always gone through phases in my life of reading more or reading less. Before 2020, when I started my channel and when I discovered Booktube, I was definitely in a reading slump. And the reason that I discovered Booktube was in part because I was wanting to read more again. I was missing reading, and I had been ruminating on it probably all through 2019, and in 2020 I really started reading a lot again. And then of course the pandemic happened and I found Booktube and I started my Booktube channel and the rest is history. And now I read a lot. As of filming this, I'm at 116 books, which is the most that I've ever read in a year that I know of. I may have read more than that at some point, but this is the most I've read since I've been keeping track. I would say that although my reading ebbs and flows, we're definitely in a flow and I'm reading a lot more currently. That doesn't mean that that won't change at some point. The next part of the question, when do you read? I'll read anytime, but I like to read for at least like 45 minutes to an hour in the morning. My brain works well, it helps wake me up. It is part of my slow morning routine and it helps me feel grounded, centered, mentally well, but it also helps me be inspired and ready to start the day. I think once I've read for about an hour, I'm really ready to tackle either getting into work or trying to be creative or filming videos or whatever it is that I need to be doing that day. I think reading in the morning really gets me off on the right foot. I also like to read audiobooks while I'm working, and I've been trying to do that more since I've been working from home, making sure that at least for part of the day, I'm always reading an audiobook. When I drive in the car alone, I read an audiobook, and I also do like to read throughout the day if I need a break. Sometimes I'll read a few pages or a few chapters, and then again, I try to read at night. I wish I was the kind of person who could read for like a couple of hours at night, but I'm not really. I get really tired. I want to look at my phone, although I try not to do that much either. And then I'm like too tired to think about it too much. Sometimes I'll go to bed early and I'll try to make sure that I read for a while before I go to bed. It also depends on what I'm reading, if I could read before I go to bed. Some things are fine, but like a horror book or something like that, I'm definitely not going to read right before I fall asleep. The last part of the question is, has how often I read changed over the years? So yes, I would say that my new slow morning routine has really dictated that hour reading in the morning, and that really started when I started my channel in 2020 when I came back to reading. And then depending on my various jobs that I've had over the last few years or my various schedules, it's either worked more or less, and currently it's working more, which is great. When I was living in the city, I would read a lot on the subway because you take a lot of subway rides or cab rides. There's a lot of time where you're underground, so I would read a lot then. I would listen to audiobooks sometimes then, but mostly I would read physically. I would also say I've gone through periods where I read more often at night before I go to bed, but like I said, I'm not in one of those currently. And then of course the times that I wasn't reading a lot, so of course it changed from there. Question number 4, how has Booktube changed your reading? Booktube has changed my reading a ton. I'm super thankful for finding Booktube and coming across it and becoming part of the community and finding wonderful friends on Booktube. And one of the reasons that I'm thankful for it is definitely because I read more diversely because of Booktube. I had a lot of preconceived notions, I think, in my time growing up. I would always try a book, I would always pick a book up, but I definitely gravitated more towards books that I knew I was gonna like or thought I was gonna like, and I definitely gravitated towards books that people recommended me in my life, which is like how I ended up reading, for instance, like the whole Harry Potter series or Ringworld or things like that. Some bad, some good. But now, because there's so much information on Booktube and there's so many recommendations to get, I am even more willing to try whatever, and I'm even more willing to be out of my comfort zone, and I'm even more willing to pick up a book that I heard 1 or 2 or 100 people talk about. In that way, I think I read more diversely and different genres of things because of people's recommendations. And then also I think Booktube has made me realize how important it is to read stories that are not like your own. Specifically for me, people of color, their lives and their experiences and their stories are important for me to read now more than ever. I think that different cultures and different countries and different areas and people with different work experience than me, people with different life experience than me is now more important than ever for me to read as well. I think when I was younger, I almost wanted to emulate the books that I read, like Jack Kerouac or something like that. And now that I'm older, I just want to share in the experience through reading. Another way that Booktube has influenced me is definitely by by getting me to read different genres. I never really read horror before, which now I love. I never really read thrillers, but now I enjoy thrillers. I never really read modern classics from other countries before, and now that's one of my favorite subgenres of modern classic. So Booktube has really been a huge influence on my reading in the last 3 years, and I hope it is for many years to come. Those were all the questions on the evolution of a reader tag, but the next part of the tag is to tag some people. So I'm going to tag Say Kevi because I think she probably has a pretty interesting evolution of reading. I'm going to tag AJ Dunn because they are currently in an evolution of their reading. And I'll tag my friend Suzanne because she does not have a Booktube channel, but she is a frequent commenter. So if she feels like it, she can leave the answers to this tag in the comments below. I would love to know how she's evolved as a reader. If you would like to be tagged yourself, feel free to leave the answers in the comment below or make a video and link it to us so that we can all go watch it. I wasn't tagged in this tag, but it was super fun to do the evolution of a reader tag created by Spread Book Joy. Definitely check her channel out as well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!